Announcements or communications.
Not at this time, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Scott, Mr. Kilgore.
Mr. Speaker, point of personal privilege.
Gentleman has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, it's not very often that we receive good news from the Supreme Court, but yesterday the Supreme Court gave a major lifeline to Southwest Virginia and Virginia. The Supreme Court ruled to halt the implementation of President Obama's Clean Power Plan. It's not only good for my region of the state, but for all of Virginia. The Clean Power Plan was yet another example of the overreaching federal government and more proof of Obama's war on coal. These regulations would have had a devastating impact on Virginia's economy, killing jobs and significantly driving up energy costs for families and businesses. You know, when candidate Obama was running for president, he said that under his plan, electricity would skyrocket. And when the independent, nonpartisan State Corporation Commission confirmed this last year when they did an analysis of the EPA's proposed rule, and they estimated that Virginia families and businesses would see an increase in electricity costs between $5.5 billion and $6 billion. Higher energy costs disproportionately impact Virginia's poorest and most vulnerable citizens. Energy consumes 1/4 of the income for those families making less than $30,000. The Clean Power Plan would require a substantial portion of today's electricity production to be replaced in part with newer and higher cost production. And these costs are going to be reflected on your energy bill. The SCC State Corporation Commission stated that this plan would place at risk billions of dollars of recent investments in coal-fired facilities in Virginia and West Virginia that we as Virginia's ratepayers have begun to pay off. You know what that's like? That's like the federal government requiring us to buy a house, take out an expensive mortgage on it, and then tell us to tear it down. But you know what? We still got to pay the mortgage. So the State Corporation Commission estimated that the new rule would require us to prematurely shut down 2.8 megawatts of generation. Taking that much electricity off the grid would mean closing at least 2 power plants before they were scheduled to be retired. The coal mining industry in Virginia, which I'm proud to represent part of, supports directly and indirectly over 40,000 jobs in Virginia and contributes over $2 billion of economic impact. Closing coal-fired power plants will kill jobs not just at the plants and in the coal fields, but across Virginia. For example, coal amounts for 77% of the total weight of all exports down in Hampton Roads at the Norfolk Port. And in Northern Virginia, the data centers and the technologies that we're so proud that locate in Northern Virginia are the largest and fastest growing consumers of electricity. And those higher energy costs means higher prices for all of us as consumers. Last year, we called on our governor to halt the implementation of these regulations to give our families and our businesses the certainty that they need while these regulations were being challenged in court. Yet, we continued down that road of implementation on this unprecedented, unconstitutional overreach, further proving that the war on coal and our way of life was under attack. That's why my colleague, Delegate O'Quinn, this year introduced House Bill 2, which required General Assembly approval before we implemented this plan. It was important, we thought, that the citizens of Virginia have a voice in this energy policy of the Commonwealth through their elected representatives. House Bill 2 restored the legislative prerogative from unelected bureaucrats to those of us in this room who are the policymakers and policy decision makers. And that's why I was so proud to see that House Bill 2 was overwhelmingly passed here in the House. And, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Supreme Court for their decision yesterday to halt the implementation of the Clean Power Plan. The decision is certainly going to grant relief and certainty to all my constituents and all our constituents who worry about their future and the future of the Commonwealth. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.